Showrooms like this are not for people like you. Go back where you came from." The words tore across the marble floor sharper than the chandeliers above. The director of the luxury car dealership did not lower his voice. He wanted everyone to hear it, every guest sipping champagne, every client circling million-dollar machines. His finger stabbed the air toward her face, a public verdict delivered with cruelty dressed as authority. A blonde associate standing at his side burst out laughing, her voice ricocheting against polished glass and chrome. A couple by the Maserati display shifted uncomfortably. Others froze in place, eyes darting between the man's fury and the woman in red who stood quietly at the center of it. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we are glad you are here. Now, back to her. She wore a crimson dress that cut clean against the sterile white showroom, a leather bag resting casually against her hip, a phone in hand. No diamonds, no entourage, no badge of power on display. Just stillness, calm, measured, unreadable. She looked at him as if his shouting was background noise, no different than the hum of air conditioning. The director sneered louder, convinced silence meant surrender. "Do not waste our time. Clients here pay millions. You could not even afford the tires." His voice pressed hard, forcing a room full of strangers to witness a ritual of humiliation. The blonde associate leaned in, smiling wide enough for the whole showroom to see. Maybe she came to take selfies with the cars, post them on social media, pretend she belongs here. A sharp laugh followed, cutting the air like broken glass. Her lips barely moved, but the faint curl at the corner carried more power than their noise. She let them talk. She let the venom pool until the floor itself seemed to vibrate. From the far side of the showroom, a young salesman shifted uneasily, his eyes narrowed. His thumb pressed the record button on his phone. The red light glowed, silent but damning. Beside him, a woman whispered, "Is this really happening?" The director snatched a glossy brochure from the counter and slapped it against her chest. The impact was not loud, but the insult thundered. "Take this and get out before I call security. This is not charity. This is prestige." Gasps flared across the showroom. One man lowered his glass. Another guest's jaw tightened. Every insult thickened the air. She inhaled once, slow and deliberate. The breath steadied her like an anchor, her heels rooted in marble. She did not shout. She did not break. And that silence, unbothered, unmovable, was more threatening than anything she could have said. He mistook it for fear. He mistook it for weakness. He mistook her for nothing. And that mistake was about to cost him everything. The silence did not last. The director stepped closer, shoes striking against polished marble like a gavel. His voice climbed, sharp enough to pierce every corner of the glass showroom. "Security! Get her out of here now!" He jabbed his finger again, his face flushed with anger. The blonde associate doubled over laughing, her voice shrill and cruel. Guests shifted uneasily, caught between spectacle and shame. A man in a tailored gray suit whispered to his wife, "He is saying this in public?" She clutched her handbag tighter, eyes wide with disbelief. Still, the woman in red remained unmoved. Her hand rested on her phone, her gaze steady on the luxury vehicles lined up like trophies. She did not look at him. She did not look at the associate still smirking beside him. She looked at the cars, as if weighing something deeper than leather interiors and horsepower. "You heard me," the director barked again, his tone more venomous now. "She does not belong here. Look at her. Look at the way she is dressed. Clients who buy here do not look like that." The words cracked something in the room. Heads turned sharply. A few guests exchanged glances, unsettled. The young salesman with the phone recording shook his head. His voice, low but steady, carried across the aisle. "That is not right." The blonde associate scoffed, eyes rolling toward him. "Do not defend her. This is a premium environment. We have a brand to protect." She said it loud enough so every potential customer could hear. The woman in red finally moved. She lifted her chin slightly, not to answer but to breathe more fully. Her silence was no longer passive. It was deliberate, a refusal to bend. The director mistook it again. His anger grew louder, thicker. He snatched a brochure from the counter, tore it in half, and threw the pieces at her feet. "Fraud, pretender, not one person like you has ever bought a car from me. Not one." The fragments of paper scattered across the marble floor like discarded dignity. Gasps spread across the room. A woman near the glass entrance whispered, "This is unbelievable." A man near the champagne table muttered, "He is destroying his own business." But the director did not see it. He only saw her stillness, and it unnerved him. His voice cracked with rage. "Get out now, before I have you dragged out." Her eyes finally locked on his. Calm, steady, unyielding. The kind of gaze that did not shout, but carried the weight of storms yet to come. And in that moment, the balance of the room shifted. She was no longer the one on trial. He was. A hush fell over the showroom, but it was not silence. It was the tension of witnesses holding their breath, waiting for what would happen next. The director stood tall, jaw tight, voice echoing like a hammer on steel. "Security," he barked again. "Remove her immediately. This is trespassing." Two uniformed guards appeared from the far hallway, their radios crackling as they approached. Their eyes darted between the director's rage and the woman's calm, as if they already sensed this was not the simple order it appeared to be. The blonde associate folded her arms, her smile wide and unrepentant. "Check her bag before you push her out," she added, her tone dripping with mockery. "People like her steal. It is what they do." The words landed heavier than the marble underfoot. A sharp gasp rippled from a young woman near the glass doors. Her voice, soft but cutting, carried across the showroom. Did she really just say that? The woman in red did not move. She let the cruelty hang in the air until it became unbearable for those who had heard it. She exhaled slowly, as if even her breath had purpose. The young salesman with the recording phone finally stepped forward, trembling but unwilling to stay silent. "Director," he said, his voice rising with each word, "she has not done anything wrong. She walked in with respect. You humiliated her in front of everyone here. That is not policy, that is prejudice." "Oh." The director turned on him with a glare fierce enough to silence most men. "Stay in your place. Do not question me in front of clients." But the damage had been done. Guests shifted uneasily. A middle-aged man in a navy suit muttered to his companion, "He is losing control." Another whispered, "This will be online in minutes." The guards reached the center of the floor. One extended a hand toward her arm. "Ma'am, please step outside with us." His tone was rehearsed, cautious, as if even he doubted the command. For the first time, she spoke. Her voice was not loud, yet it cut through the tension with a blade of steel. "Do not touch me." The guard hesitated, his hand suspended in air. The director snapped, "What are you waiting for? Remove her." She raised her phone slightly, pressed one button, and lifted it to her ear. Her tone was calm, businesslike, as if she were confirming a dinner reservation. "Activate protocol. Pull the Horizon deal." The room stilled. Those words meant little to most of the guests, but the young salesman froze, recognition dawning on his face. Horizon. The $5 billion fleet contract. The director blinked, confused for the first time. His anger faltered. But before he could speak again, her gaze met his directly, unwavering. And for the first time, he looked away. The director's smirk faltered, but his pride forced him forward. He straightened his blazer and tried to laugh, a hollow sound that rang false in the charged air. "Protocol? Horizon deal? You think throwing around fancy words makes you somebody?" His voice cracked with mockery, yet beneath it was the tremor of doubt. The woman in red did not flinch. Her phone remained against her ear, her tone level and deliberate. "Confirm withdrawal of all pending orders," she said. On the other end, a voice responded clearly, audible enough for those nearby to hear. "Confirmed, madam. The $5 billion contract is terminated effective immediately." A gasp broke the air like glass shattering. Guests exchanged sharp glances, whispers spreading like fire. "Did she say $5 billion? One man asked aloud. Another replied under his breath, "She just canceled it. Right here, right now." The blonde associate's grin collapsed into disbelief. Her arms unfolded, hands clutched together, eyes wide. "No," she muttered. "That is not possible." The director's face drained of color. His jaw moved, but no words came out. He looked around desperately, as if the showroom walls might offer an escape, but every reflection in the polished glass showed the same truth. He had humiliated the wrong woman. The young salesman lowered his phone from recording, his voice trembling but clear. "That was the Horizon deal. I read about it last quarter. It was supposed to secure our brand for the next decade." Guests began pulling out their own phones, capturing the unraveling scene. A woman whispered loudly enough for the crowd to hear, "She is the reason this dealership even had a future." Another guest, older and sharp-eyed, muttered, "Not anymore." The woman in red lowered her phone slowly, her eyes never leaving the director's. She spoke with calm finality. "I came here to sign your survival. Instead, you chose to sign your own collapse." The guards froze, caught between conflicting loyalties. The order to remove her no longer made sense. They exchanged uneasy glances, radios silent in their hands. The director tried to salvage the moment, his voice shrill and desperate. "You are bluffing. This is an act. You cannot just walk in here and—" She cut him off, her tone low but commanding. "I am the Chief Executive Officer of Horizon Mobility Group. I do not bluff. I decide." And the room erupted in whispers and gasps. The words settled over the crowd like a verdict. Clients who had once looked away now leaned forward, some even clapping softly. The truth had shifted the ground beneath the director's feet. And for the first time, he realized he was no longer standing on solid ground. He was sinking. The director stumbled back a step, as if the weight of her words pressed against his chest. His voice, once sharp and certain, cracked in front of the crowd. No, this cannot be true. She is lying, she is just pretending." But the guests were no longer on his side. Their eyes no longer followed him. Every gaze in the room had shifted toward her, the woman in red who stood calm among luxury machines worth millions. The silence was not empty. It was heavy, the kind of silence that announces judgment. The blonde associate's laughter had vanished. Her face twisted, pale, desperate. She whispered, "Director, if she really is the Chief Executive Officer of Horizon, then—" She stopped herself, the sentence unfinished but the fear already written across her face. The young salesman stepped forward, his phone still glowing in his hand. His voice carried a conviction that silenced the last of the whispers. "I saw the Horizon documents. I read about the deal. She is telling the truth. That contract was the future of this dealership." The crowd stirred. One man in a tailored Navy suit shook his head slowly. $5 billion. Gone in one phone call. A woman near the entrance gasped, her voice trembling. She warned him. She told him not to touch her. And now, look at what happened. The director's pride clung to him like a drowning man clings to broken wood. He slammed his palm on the counter, forcing his voice louder. "Even if you are who you say you are, you have no power here. This is my showroom. I make the rules." Her reply was steady, cutting, and cold. "You had power. Now you have witnesses, and every witness here will remember that you tried to humiliate me in public. That is the only legacy you have left." The guards who had been summoned earlier shifted awkwardly, their eyes on the floor. One finally spoke, his tone respectful, almost cautious. "Ma'am, do you wish for us to remove anyone from the premises?" The director whipped around, stunned. "You answer to me, not her," he barked. But the guard did not look at him. His gaze remained locked on her. A ripple of recognition passed through the crowd. Phones rose higher. Guests leaned closer. The balance of authority had shifted completely, and everyone could feel it. The woman in red took a slow step forward. Her heels echoed against the marble like the strike of a clock. She spoke clearly, each word deliberate. "You called me a fraud in a showroom I was about to save. You told me I did not belong. But after tonight, this place will not belong to you." The blonde associate covered her mouth with both hands. The director staggered back another step, pale and breathless. The room was no longer a showroom. It was a courtroom, and the verdict had already been delivered. The director's face twisted with desperation. He looked around the room, searching for support, but found only raised phones and unblinking eyes. His voice wavered as he tried to summon authority. "This is slander. You cannot just walk in here and destroy my business. Security, arrest her, now." But the guards did not move. Their radios remained silent. Their eyes flicked from him to her, then to the growing circle of guests who were no longer passive onlookers but witnesses. The weight of the moment pressed down on every polished surface of the showroom. A middle-aged man near the champagne table raised his voice for the first time. "I heard her on the phone. That was not theater. That was real authority." He turned to the others, his words catching like fire. "She owns the deal, she owns the future, and he just threw it away." Murmurs swelled. A woman in a silver dress stepped forward, her voice sharp. "I have bought 2 cars here in the last year. I will never buy again after seeing this. You do not treat people like this. She pointed directly at the director, her words cutting through him. The blonde associate's confidence shattered. Her voice cracked as she whispered to him, "Director, we are finished. If she canceled that contract, the manufacturer will cut us off. We will lose everything." The young salesman, still holding his phone, finally spoke louder, his courage blooming in the presence of truth. "I am done being silent. I have watched you speak to customers like this before. I have heard the words you use when you think nobody is listening. Today it ends." The director turned on him, rage sparking. "You are finished here. Fired. Effective immediately." But the young man did not flinch. His voice was steady, almost calm. "You do not have the authority to fire me anymore." Gasps swept the showroom. The statement hung in the air like thunder. Everyone knew it was true. The director's authority had already collapsed. The woman in red took another step forward, her voice rising not in anger but in finality. "This was never about buying a car. This was about respect. And tonight you showed the world that your showroom is built on arrogance, not service. That arrogance has a cost, and the bill just came due." The director's knees seemed to weaken beneath him. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. He looked smaller than he ever had, a man stripped of the illusion of power. The guests clapped softly at first, then louder, the sound rolling across the marble like a verdict sealed. Some raised their glasses not to toast him but to honor her, and in that moment, the director realized he was not just losing a contract, he was losing everything. The clapping faded into a heavy silence. Every eye in the showroom locked onto the woman in red. The director, pale and trembling, tried once more to regain control. His voice was brittle, but he forced it louder. "Enough. You are nothing but a manipulator, a thief in a dress. I will not let you ruin me." The words rang out with venom. He pointed directly at her bag, his tone dripping with accusation. "Search her belongings. She probably came here to steal. That is what people like her do." Gasps erupted across the room. A woman near the entrance pressed her hand against her chest. "He did not just say that." A man by the glass wall muttered, "This is beyond prejudice. This is hate." The blonde associate, emboldened by his fury, stepped forward. She sneered. "He is right. Check her. Strip away the act. She does not belong among real clients." The guards froze, caught in the storm of commands. Their eyes darted to her, waiting. But the woman in red did not flinch. She did not even blink. Her voice, calm and sharp as a blade, filled the space. "You accuse me of theft while standing in a showroom I was prepared to save. You call me a fraud in front of witnesses, while your every word proves your ignorance." She stepped forward, the click of her heels echoing like a countdown. Her gaze swept across the room, pulling every guest into her orbit. "Let us be clear. I did not come here to steal. I came here to give. A contract worth $5 billion, thousands of jobs, a decade of stability," and he threw it all away with one sentence. Whispers turned to outrage. A customer shouted from the back, "She is right. I heard every word." Another added, "You destroyed this place yourself. Nobody else." The director's desperation spilled into his voice. He shouted toward the guards, "Remove her. Arrest her. I will not be humiliated in my own showroom." But this time, one guard finally spoke, his voice steady and unshaken. "Sir, with respect, it is you who humiliated yourself, and we will not lay a hand on her." The blonde associate staggered back, her confidence collapsing. No, this is not happening," she whispered, eyes darting toward the watching crowd. The young salesman raised his phone higher, his voice firm. "The world is already watching. Every insult, every slur, every word. You cannot erase this." The woman in red lifted her chin, her voice ringing like a verdict. "You thought I was powerless. You thought silence meant weakness. But silence is not weakness. Silence is warning." The room trembled under the weight of her words. The director's authority had cracked completely, and though he tried to stand tall, everyone could see it, he was already falling. The director's hands trembled as he gripped the edge of the counter. His voice, once booming, now came out cracked and frantic. "You will not get away with this. I will call the manufacturer myself. They will laugh at your little performance." The woman in red raised her phone once more, her tone calm and deliberate. "Patch me through," she said softly. Within seconds, a crisp voice echoed from the speaker. "Madam, this is the Horizon Executive Desk. Your termination order has been received. The manufacturer's corporate board has already been notified. The dealership's contract is under review. The words fell like a hammer. Gasps scattered through the crowd. The blonde associate stumbled backward, her face drained of all color. Under review? That means... She stopped, unable to finish. The director's eyes widened in disbelief. No, this is not possible. They need me. This dealership has been here for 20 years. The young salesman spoke up, his voice steady now, no longer trembling. They do not need you. They need her. She controls the contract. She controls the future. Guests began speaking over each other, their whispers turning into a chorus. $5 billion. Gone. I saw it with my own eyes. He destroyed everything with his prejudice. The guard stepped aside, no longer even pretending to follow his orders. One of them muttered under his breath, "This is done. He is finished." The woman in red lowered her phone slowly, her eyes locked onto the director. I gave you a chance to show respect. Instead, you chose humiliation. You accused. You mocked. You tried to erase me. Now it is not me who leaves this showroom. It is you. Her words hit harder than any shout. The guests erupted in applause, some clapping, some raising their phones to capture the moment. The director shook his head wildly, his pride clinging like a dying flame. You cannot do this to me. This is my business. This is my life. She stepped closer, her heels clicking like the final strokes of a clock winding down. You destroyed your business the moment you opened your mouth. Prejudice is not policy, arrogance is not leadership, and tonight the world will watch you collapse under your own words. The blonde associate broke, tears brimming at the corners of her eyes. Please, she whispered, but it was too late. The weight of the moment had shifted completely. The woman in red did not need to raise her voice. She did not need to move another step. The verdict was already written, and the entire room knew it. And for the first time, the director realized that he was no longer fighting to save his reputation. He was fighting to breathe in a world where his power had just been erased. The director staggered back, his eyes wide and frantic as though the walls themselves were closing in. His voice cracked under the weight of panic. This cannot be real. You do not have that kind of power. You are nothing but a show. Horizon would never put someone like you in charge. The words, dripping with venom, hung in the air like poison. Gasps filled the room. A woman near the front shook her head, her voice trembling but resolute. Someone like her? That is the problem. That is exactly why you are losing everything. The young salesman raised his phone higher, his voice strong now, echoing with certainty. The world is watching. I have streamed every second. They heard him say it. They saw her shut down a $5 billion contract with one call. This is not theater. This is history. The director's chest heaved, sweat beaded across his forehead. He turned desperately to the blonde associate. Back me up. Tell them this is a scam. Tell them she is lying. But the associate shook her head slowly, fear hollowing her voice. She is not lying. I heard the executive desk myself. They addressed her as Madam. They confirmed the termination. It is over. Guests exchanged looks, whispers swelling into open outrage. She offered him a future, and he threw it away. I would never buy here again. This entire place is finished. The woman in red stepped forward, her presence commanding the space more than any shouting could. Her voice was steady, sharp, undeniable. For years you spoke to people like me as if we were less. You measured worth by skin, by dress, by stereotype. Tonight that measure destroyed you. The guards did not wait for instructions. One moved quietly toward the door panel and disabled the electronic locks, as though preparing for the inevitable. The director saw it and snapped. No, do not touch that. This is still my dealership. But the guard's voice carried a finality that could not be undone. Not anymore. The applause began softly, a ripple across the marble floor, then louder, building like thunder. Guests clapped not for spectacle but for justice. The sound rolled through the showroom, drowning out the director's protests. His hands trembled as he slammed them against the counter, his voice shrill and desperate. I built this place. I made it what it is. You cannot take it from me. The woman in red did not blink. I did not take it from you. You gave it away. Every insult was a brick torn from your own foundation. Tonight, the structure you built collapsed under the weight of your arrogance. The crowd erupted again, their voices louder than his protests. Phones recorded, eyes watched, and the truth was undeniable. The director had not simply lost control. He had lost everything, and she had only just begun. The director's face drained of all color. His lips parted, but only broken sounds escaped. He looked out at the crowd, searching for an ally, a single nod of agreement, but none came. Every guest, every guard, every staff member had turned against him. His authority, once unshakable, now looked like a cheap suit unraveling at the seams. The woman in red did not raise her voice. She did not need to. Her words carried across the room with precision, every syllable striking deeper than any shout. You thought this was your kingdom, but kingdoms fall when the throne is built on prejudice. Tonight the crown has slipped, and everyone here saw it. The blonde associate covered her mouth with shaking hands, her eyes darting to the door as though she could already see her future outside these walls. She whispered, "We are ruined. We are really ruined." The young salesman stepped forward, his recording still live. "I hope the world hears this, because this is not just about one woman. This is about every person who has ever walked into a place like this and been told they did not belong." His voice quivered, not from fear, but from truth. Guests nodded, some murmuring their agreement. A man in a navy suit called out, "She belongs here more than you ever did." Applause broke out again, sharper this time, echoing off the marble floor and glass walls. The director's hands slammed against the counter, his last weapon, the sheer volume of his voice. "Stop clapping! Stop filming! None of this matters. I am the director here. I decide who stays and who goes." But the room no longer listened. The guards stepped back from him, their stances rigid but their loyalty gone. One of them spoke clearly, his words like a sentence being read aloud. "Sir, your access privileges have been revoked. You are no longer in command here." The director's eyes widened in shock. "What did you say?" The guard did not waver. "Your badge is invalid. Orders from corporate have just come through. You have been terminated effective immediately." The blonde associate gasped, tears spilling down her face. The director snatched at his pocket, pulling out his badge, and slammed it against the scanner on the wall. The light blinked red. Denied. Again. Denied. The finality of the rejection struck like thunder. Phones caught every second. Guests leaned forward, whispering fiercely, "It is true. They locked him out. He is finished." The woman in red stepped into the center of the circle, her gaze steady, her tone final. "I warned you. I told you silence is not weakness. It is warning. And tonight, the warning became your judgment." The applause swelled once more, rolling across the showroom like a wave. The director's power had not just slipped away. It had been stripped clean, exposed under the lights he once used to sell luxury. And now, standing in his own showroom, he was nothing more than a man without a crown, surrounded by witnesses who would never forget. The director's badge fell from his hand and clattered against the marble floor. The red light of rejection still glowed on the scanner behind him, a cruel reminder that his authority was gone. His breathing turned shallow, his eyes wild as he spun toward the crowd. "This is a mistake. Corporate will fix this. They will not listen to her. They cannot." But the silence that followed was louder than his protests. Guests stared back with cold certainty. No one moved to support him. No one raised a hand in his defense. The blonde associate's tears streaked down her face as she backed away from him, whispering again and again, "We are finished." The woman in red stepped closer. Her heels clicked with the finality of a judge's gavel. She stopped only a few feet away from him, her voice calm, her gaze unyielding. "You are not finished because of me. You are finished because of yourself. Every word you spoke tonight was a stone laid in your own grave." The young salesman raised his phone, broadcasting to the growing number of live viewers. You all saw it. He humiliated her, accused her, called security, tried to erase her, and now his power is gone. This is justice happening in real time. Murmurs swelled into anger. A woman in the crowd pointed at the director, her voice sharp with indignation. "You do not deserve to stand in this showroom. You disgraced it with your hatred." Another guest added, "You made us ashamed to be here." One of the guards finally moved forward. He reached for the director's arm, not harshly, but firmly. "Sir, you need to leave the premises. Immediately." The director jerked away, his voice shrill with denial. "You cannot do this. This is my name on the wall. This is my legacy." The guard's tone did not shift. Not anymore. Corporate has revoked your position, your access, and your license. You are trespassing now. Gasps rippled across the room. Phones tilted to capture every second, every angle. The guests knew they were watching history unfold, an empire collapsing in minutes. The woman in red did not flinch. She lifted her chin, her words deliberate and final. You tried to erase me in front of strangers. Instead, you erased yourself in front of witnesses. That is the true legacy you leave behind. The guard took his arm again. This time, the director did not resist. His shoulders sagged, his defiance drained into despair. The crowd parted as he was led toward the glass doors, the applause swelling once more, echoing against the showroom walls like a verdict sealed forever. The blonde associate followed a step behind, her face pale, her career dissolving before her eyes. She whispered a single word as the doors closed behind them. Ruined. And in that moment, it became clear the punishment was not just professional, it was absolute. The showroom no longer belonged to him. It never would. Again. The glass doors closed behind the disgraced director, and the echo of his departure lingered like a shadow. The applause did not fade. It grew louder, rolling through the showroom like a storm cleansing the air. Guests clapped not out of spectacle, but out of conviction. They had seen arrogance collapse. They had seen justice delivered without a single shout. The woman in red stood at the center of it all. She did not raise her hands for attention. She did not need to. Every eye was already on her. She scanned the room slowly, her calm presence commanding more than any title could. The young salesman lowered his phone at last, his voice breaking with emotion. "Thank you," he said softly, "for showing us what power really looks like." His words cracked the tension, and several guests nodded in agreement. A woman in a silver dress called out from the back, "You did not just save your dignity tonight, you saved ours too." The room hummed with murmurs of support, strangers united by the spectacle of truth. The woman in red finally spoke, her voice even and measured. "Do not mistake silence for surrender. Silence is strength, silence is preparation, and when the time comes, silence speaks louder than rage ever could." Her words cut through the room like scripture. Guests lifted their phones higher, recording every syllable, every breath. They knew this was more than a confrontation. It was a declaration. She turned toward the young salesman, meeting his eyes. "You stood up when others stayed quiet. Do not stop now. The world needs witnesses with courage." His throat tightened, and he nodded, unable to speak. Then, with a calm certainty that silenced even the applause, she stepped toward the nearest luxury car. Her reflection glowed against its polished frame. "He thought I did not belong here," she said quietly, but her words carried across the entire space. "But the truth is simple. This place will not belong to him ever again." The crowd erupted, clapping, cheering, some even shouting her name, though most did not yet know it. Phones captured every angle, every echo. The moment would not be forgotten. It would spread. She adjusted the strap of her bag, straightened her shoulders, and walked slowly toward the exit. No rush, no retreat, just a deliberate stride that announced her victory. The guests stepped aside, creating a path, their applause following her like a procession. As the doors opened before her, she spoke one last sentence, her voice carrying the weight of finality. "I do not need to film proof of what happened tonight. I am the proof. I am the result." The glass closed behind her, and the applause inside thundered on. The verdict had been delivered. The message was clear. Dignity cannot be erased, and power does not shout. It stands. It endures. It wins.